man was walking in the woods one day when he saw a bear out of the corner of his eye. He stopped, said a silent prayer. God, I know you can do all things. Will you please make this bear a fellow Christian? The bear caught up to the man, placed his paw on the man's shoulder, and said, Brother, will you pray with me? Dear God, for this meal that I am about to receive, make me truly thankful. This is The Christian Bear with Dr. Ben Hilsman. Welcome to The Christian Bear. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Hilskamp. I'm so happy to have you join me in this conversation. Thank you for making the time. The Christian Bear is a space for reflection, faith sharing, public theology, and lively discussion. I don't claim to know it all, but hopefully in conversation we can get closer to the truth and co-create our truths. Are you enjoying The Christian Bear? Please give the podcast a 5-star rating on whatever platform you're using, and think about adding a short review. Also, share this episode and the whole podcast with your friends and other people in your network. Consider contributing to my Patreon, the link for which is in the episode information. All funds raised through Patreon go to supporting the costs associated with producing and hosting this podcast. Now lean in and enjoy this episode of The Christian Bear. Welcome to episode 54 of The Christian Bear. Today it's my pleasure to welcome my longtime friend and mentor, Jess Pettitt, to the podcast. Jess is an internationally recognized speaker and author who is the owner and operator of Good Enough Now and speaks at colleges and businesses around the world. Please join me in welcoming Jess to The Christian Bear. So, Jess, thank you again for joining us for another episode of The Christian Bear. We had you on during our series on belief, and so happy that you would come back and give us some more time and some more of your perspective. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd love if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're working on.
Sure. So I'm Jess Pettitt. I have known Ben for approximately 112 years, I think. And I really love that we get to have conversations about social justice issues, politics, family, friends, workplace, and that really is kind of a amalgamation of what it is that I do. I'm primarily a closing keynote speaker that uses a lot of humor and current events to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion issues. And that's pretty much it. I tell a bunch of jokes about all the topics you're not supposed to talk about. And I love coming on this podcast because we never know what we're going to talk about, but it's all probably something somebody thinks we're not supposed to talk about.
Yeah, I think that's about right. So to get us started, if you could have one song play every time you walked into your home, what would it be?
Oh, that is not fair because I have all different kinds of personalities. Can I have two answers?
Sure.
One is there's a song that they got in trouble, but I still love it. It's called Bittersweet Symphony by The Verve. And I have a very interesting kind of almost symbolic spiritual connection to that song. So that would be it. And then the other one, if I only really had one, would be Darth Vader's March.
Very nice. Very nice. What is a relatively basic task that you find very difficult?
What's a routine task I find difficult?
A relatively basic task, easy, whatever sort of task that you find difficult.
There's so many. Doing dishes, doing anything with a handle, elbow grease. I am a really hard worker and I can do very heavy, intense things, but I have no access to elbow grease. I hear that this is a thing. It's like a biological clock. I didn't get one of those either. Putting laundry away. Final answer. Breaking down boxes to put into recycling.
Okay. So is it about the actual like strength behind that, or is it for me it would be like the act of cleaning. I mean, cleaning just escapes me.
Yeah, I think it's just I don't want to. I think that my whatever stubborn streak I have shows up most in those particular areas. What's interesting is that when I have lived by myself or when I am now by myself, I do dishes every night before I go to bed because I like to wake up in the morning to a clean counter. Um, but if my partner is home, I suddenly have no idea how to do that.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe it's
So perhaps this goes along with that last question, but what's your biggest pet peeve?
again so many answers. Rudeness, people feeling like their problem or situation is bigger. Like, perfect example is if a flight is delayed or canceled. Um, when someone says, "My flight was canceled," and they throw their tickets at the counter to the gate agent who is one, very aware, and two, they have been standing in line of everyone else who was on that flight. That is awful. I do not like that. The fact that somehow or another I cannot remember how much paper cuts hurt.
Ooh.
Or yeah, so like you get one and you're just like, how is this not like PTSD causing that I would remember? It's such a shock every time. Um, and a third magic one, because again, I can't have just one answer. People who don't use their turn signals.
Mm.
Like, just help a friend out. What are you doing over there? I've turned into an old woman.
I have so many thoughts about that last one, given that you live in California, and and I don't know, it might just be that I grew up in the Midwest, but you know, California drivers and New York drivers were always presented to us as like the worst drivers anywhere.
I don't know that that's wrong, and maybe that's why it annoys me, or to the point that it is elevated to a pet peeve.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Is it more important to understand or be understood?
I'm gonna go with understand. Um, it's lovely to be understood, um, but you can't make that happen. And to understand someone else is really on you and your ability, my ability to listen, have empathy, try to figure out where the other person is coming from. But curiosity is also exhilarating. And so when I don't understand, instead of getting impatient with it, I want to lean into that. Do I do that 100% of the time? No. Is it harder to do with people who are closer to my inner circle? Yes. But I'm going to go with to understand.
Okay. Fair enough. If you could get rid of one U.S. state, which state would it be and why?
What means to get rid of?
Erase from the face of the earth. Not necessarily in a genocidal way of like we're killing everyone that's there,
Appreciate
but we
that.
are but we are removing the state and I don't know, we're relocating the people, but we're removing the state.
Florida.
You are the second person of the day that's answered that question with Florida. Why Florida?
Well, what's interesting about Florida is I'm not actually answering it based on politics or class, which I think would have been kind of the easy way for me to answer that. Number one, the vast majority of the state will be underwater probably in my lifetime. So, like, let's help the relocation process out with the folks who are going to be living underwater. So from a global warming perspective, that is the first thing I thought of. The second thing I thought of was that I have a lot of exposure to states that get made fun of a lot. Like, I'm from Texas. I went to college in Arkansas. I went to grad school in South Carolina. And collectively, we're all grateful that we have Florida as like the punchline. So punchline combined with we're really just helping all the people relocate before they die.
Okay. Sounds good.
That's an optimistic
Hey,
answer.
again, the person I interviewed this morning said Florida because it has lots of old people.
Oh,
So your answer is actually slightly more optimistic. When was the last time you were truly happy?
right now. Um, I think what's interesting is I've been asked that question several times on a number of podcasts. I think it's supposed to be like a hard, pondering question. And I'm really exceptionally aware that I have no idea how long I'm here for. And I have no idea the next time pain or suffering is going to occur to me or to someone I deeply care about. Um, and right now, none of that is occurring. I'm delightfully happy.
Awesome. Awesome. What is your favorite word in any language?
Oh, am I allowed to cuss word?
Yes.
Oh, fuck. Absolutely. 100% it is fuck. And in any language I have ever been immersed in, it is the same word.
I was really hoping you were going to answer that question that exact way.
Oh, yeah. That's like there's like a second place, but like I often I speak fluent Bulgarian, which is handy almost never. But here we are. And in speaking fluent Bulgarian, there is a word that I love the most in Bulgarian, and so I will use it in English, especially if I am not allowed to cuss in that particular setting. But it is proho smukarchka. And I'm sure a native Bulgarian speaker is going to say that I'm putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable, but that is my favorite word. Proho smukarchka. It literally means, I think, earth sucker. And
Okay.
it is what we call a vacuum cleaner.
Hmm.
Proho smukarchka. So when I can't cuss, if I get to say like, then that's fun to me.
Okay. I still remember when I had got when I got my second professional job after grad school. You sent me. You had been one of my references, and you sent me a card once I got there that on the front had, you know, what was it? Fan fucking tastic or something. And I opened it with a very much more conservative, much more very prim and proper colleague standing behind me who was just like, "Who the hell are you?" To me, upon seeing this card. So I
I am
cannot.
known for my good stationery.
Pardon?
I am known for my good stationery.
Yes,
It's
you
true.
are. Yes, you are.
Mhm.
Should toilet paper hang over or under?
One answer over.
Amen. What's the strangest gift you've ever received?
The strangest gift that I really like, and I actually still have the uh, poster of it. I guess it's framed. But when I was in high school, I started this program in my high school. Of course, I did. Helping orient students who moved in. I went to my graduating class was over 3,000 students. So moving to Plano Senior High in 1992 was a daunting thing for people to make friends, etc. So I started this program that connected incomers with people who already lived there to make
Hmm.
friends over the summer. Is anyone surprised I did this? No.
No.
So the counselors bought me a star when I was in high school as like a thank you present at the end of the year of my senior year. It was my senior present. And I am obsessed with space. And I don't think I really knew that I was obsessed with space in high school because I was a girl in Texas and that's like science. So to buy a star was like knowing me before I knew me. And it was just such an interesting, customized, individual gift And I haven't even my life. I have not received many things like that, but it was so weird and perfect. And I have moved a lot. I am not a stuff kind of person, but I have kept that framed star named Jessica. Um, that's probably the weirdest gift. Yeah,
That's a great gift, though.
yeah.
Um, awesome. What was the most defining moment of your life to date?
Oh wow. I don't know that I can answer that question.
Hmm.
Does that mean it's a stumper? Do you get like unicorn points for stumpers?
I think
Um,
so, particularly if I'm stumping you.
yeah. Um, I write in my book, not to be doing some kind of like passive aggressive sales thing, but there's a process in the book I talk about crucible moments in your life. And most people, when I walk them through this activity, they name all these negative things. But crucible moments can be really positive moments too. Um, so like I might I might automatically go to the when my mother died, right? It's the first major loss of my life. I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me.
Gosh,
So, thank you. So, the death of my mother was probably the
mm,
first real break in naivete, if that makes any sense. Um, because my mother died, fast forward, I had this insurance money and I didn't know what to do with it. And I was 19, and so I didn't want to
mm,
I was dumb and in college, so I didn't want to buy like pizza with or. So I ended up going to Kenya with this work trip through my college. It's a long story. But there's a moment when I was in Kenya where it was somebody on the trip's birthday. So we woke up really early and went to this really high point. We were just outside of Nairobi and we watched the sunrise kind of above the treetops, and like the jungle woke up. And it was probably one of the moments where I realized how insignificant I am,
mm,
right? Shortly after how naive I have been. And then on the way home, I had purchased somehow the wrong ticket. So on the way home from Kenya, it was the first time I was in an international airport by myself with my passport and had to figure out how to like re-figure out how to get home. Now I was in countries that all spoke English, so and airports that spoke English. It was not that big of a deal. But those three things all smushed together to me are now like one memory bubble that connects my innocence and naivete, which I long to have and do and don't. My sense of wonder and smallness and resourceful and scrappiness. Um, can that be one answer?
that can totally be one answer, and that's a great answer. Um, and yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Sure.
If a tree falls in the woods and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound?
It does make a sound. For no other reasons than molecules are moving through space and bumping other molecules around. And I don't believe that a human or something with auditory abilities needs to be present in order for something else to have meaning or existence.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Hendrix or Millsaps?
I went to Hendrix. I assume you're asking that question on purpose.
Yes.
Um, I have. I was like, wow, no one knows that. Yeah, so I went to Hendrix, and I have. It's so funny you said that, as I like instantly was transported back to basketball games where we would like shake our keys as it was time to go home. Millsaps.
Hmm.
Evidently, I still have some Hendrix pride floating around in there.
Totally, totally. And I'm glad that you actually have a memory of Hendrix and Millsaps being rivals. I searched Hendrix rivals, and the only thing that came up was I think the University of Central Arkansas, but there were also tons of notes that these two no longer play each other.
They never play each other, and the rivalry is more about classism than it is about sports. And
Yeah.
I don't really like sports, but Millsaps was straight up sports. University of Central Arkansas is a state school in the same teeny tiny town, which has grown a lot and is not near as tiny as it was when I was there in the 1900s. Hendrix is a small private liberal arts college. So they had the stereotypes were is that they had parties every night. We had good parties once a week. The rest of the week we were studying.
Mm. Studying.
Yeah, it's kind of disparaging on UCA, but that's okay.
Well, I mean, I always forget that you went to Hendrix, given that I know Hendrix from when I was at Swanee, at least. Hendrix and Swanee played each other. We were in the same conference.
Right.
Again, at
Also
least when I was.
a basketball rival, but not as bad as Millsaps.
Got it. Got it. Well, in the same vein, USC, and by USC I mean South Carolina, or Clemson.
Go Cox!
Okay, there we go.
I'm House of Slytherin, so the loyalty runs so deep in me. I'm more likely to walk around with a bad haircut than to get a new hairstylist for a very long period of time. So yeah, I'm laughing and astonished at my own sense of pride related to these schools.
hey, I still firmly believe that it is better to flunk out of Swanee than to ever go to Rhodes.
I'm with you.
So, can peace be achieved through military strength?
Interesting. I am working on a book right now, and I just wrote something about this as I was talking about Ukraine. And it's astonishing to me how much support is coming out, and I'm speaking specifically from the U.S. for the Ukraine. Not that they are not worthy of support. Can we just say I'm fine supporting Ukraine? Let's put that to the side. And the United States has invaded countries for their own ego and land grab. We have been the Russia in this situation. That didn't seem to bother anyone. What is the difference between the countries we invaded versus the country Russia invaded? There's not a lot of blonde, beautiful little kids, right? So that's one. And two, I don't know anything about military action, and so I want to be really cognizant that things are much more complicated than Monday morning quarterbacking decisions. Mistakes can happen whether they are militaristic or not. And Machiavellian stuff may or may not have a place. Like, again, I want to put all those things on the table. But we are also a country that has bombed ourselves instead of having a conversation or using diplomacy in our own neighborhoods. We are actively failing an attempted genocide that we won't even recognize, and we're the only country who's ever dropped an atomic bomb, let alone two. Under this Machiavellian principle of we're killing hundreds of thousands of innocent people to save more lives than that, probably. Put all that on the table. It seems oxymoronic that a fight would make peace.
I cannot disagree with you. Yet, I also acknowledge the nuance and the not having that, for whatever it's worth, having that understanding of military, I don't know, nature, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a fan of sitting back and letting people die. And I wish we didn't have to have this conversation at all.
Agreed. Describe your relationship with nature.
Pre-COVID or post-COVID?
Let's say post-COVID, because that's or whatever COVID descriptor we're using these days.
Well stated. I say that because I live in this really, really beautiful place that people travel all around the world to come visit. and married an environmental ethicist, and it's all pretty much lost on me. Like, I would fundamentally rather have access to a Genius bar or a store where I could walk in and buy a shirt that fits my body off the rack, then I'm living in the town in the middle of nowhere that has the Costco. So therefore, I live in the big town. What? During COVID, sheltering in place on a cliff on the ocean, seemingly most of the time with good internet signal, but I could disappear into a redwood forest. I could drive my car 4 minutes from my house and watch waves for hours. The latter of those things I really had never been still enough to appreciate, which I think also speaks to my anxiety and my own kind of mental health issues. The redwoods are mystical and magical, and the community of people who've chosen to live here. There's also people who live here who've never had an option to leave. But that combination, I have a new respect for what nature means and how we are so secondary. Like, so much of my work is around human and human relations, and how humans treat each other doesn't matter if none of this matters if we're not actually taking care of where we have the privilege of being. So I've kind of newfound awe for nature.
I couldn't agree with you more in what you just said. And on top of that, since moving back to Ohio, I'm recognizing the privilege in being able, and I've heard you speak to this to some degree as well, but the privilege in being able to pretty readily, if I so choose, be able to pick up and find a job where I can move somewhere that's not Columbus, Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
if I wanted to. So in the privilege in being able to choose where I live as well. So I appreciate that you said that as well.
Yeah.
What is the most profound or defining book you have read?
Found or defining book that I have read. Now we're back to questions with way too many answers. I wish you could hear the noises of all the books like surfacing through my brain right now. My go-to answer for that usually is The Art of Possibility by Benjamin Zander.
Hmm.
It is like a little teaspoon of woo-woo, but it's mostly self-improvement around the control you have of your own ego.
Interesting.
I really love that book. It is the book that I buy and give away the most. There is a connection of powerful books in my life that somehow are all yellow. So when I get recommended a book and it's a yellow cover, I get really excited. So if we were to tour yellow books, Art of Possibility for sure. Expletive Deleted is also a fantastic book, and it is a historical dive of every cuss word, swear word, blasphemy, and expletive, and where it came from and what it derived from, and what caused certain words to suddenly have this really socially inappropriate connotation. It's a great book. And then Todd Herman's Alter Ego has been very good for my own business. About getting in my own way or getting out of my own way and kind of creating a totem, so to speak. I don't think that's the best use of that word, but that's the word that he uses when I need it the most. So I kind of have a way of having my own back in the scenarios in which I know I'm going to need someone to have my back. Those are 3 yellow books.
I love it. Yellow books.
I know. I thought of 2 others, but they're not yellow, so we'll stick to yellows. Okay.
Fair enough. Who's your favorite drag queen?
Um, the best answer is someone no one knows. And they're in, some bar that is doing a drag night once a month. And they are loving their life. They're super creative. They're doing whatever it is they're doing to an audience of 4 people that aren't the people they brought with them. And they feel free and loved. I mean, there isn't a specific one. I actually get really queasy, I guess, of how drag and gender has been commercialized, and I just think some forms of creativity don't need to be commercialized, but here we are. I have very strange love affair for drag that is also contradictory to objectifying women's bodies, using sexualized violence based words related to women's bodies. And I think, as someone who identifies as a more masculine woman, at least energy wise, maybe not costume wise, it's I have a very interesting relationship with femininity, and I don't think you need to get good at deceiving people for fun. Now, right-winged people don't hear that as me saying drag is bad. That's not what I mean. I'm in awe, and there was a TikTok I saw last night, actually, that said something to the effect of, like, trans men don't have to be masculine to be men. And it was this amazing, incredible, confident human, totally blurring the lines of what is perceived as a woman or perceived as a man. Very feminine in a very masculine way. That makes sense if you see the TikTok. I can't remember their name. And they're doing the Wednesday dance in their bathroom. And it was like sensual and powerful and erotic and playful all at the same time, which ultimately I think is what gender is. And that is a rabbit hole. You asked me for someone's name, and I don't have a name.
Hey, rabbit holes are fine. What is the most important punctuation mark in the English language?
Classic Gen Xer, an ellipse.
Okay. We'll agree to disagree.
What's yours?
The Oxford comma.
Oh, Oxford comma is mandatory. So yeah, no, I am also team Oxford comma. I also put 2 spaces after a period.
You don't need to do that anymore.
I know. I'm aware.
Okay. Is it more important to love or to be loved?
I did read the title of this show. I don't know that I have landed on an answer on that, because I really deeply struggle with both of them. I think, like, needing to be loved is kind of an obvious entry point, but I'm finding, especially coming out of isolation and quarantine and all that stuff, that my need to love other people is very high. And that does not pair well when you also have commitment issues. And so I feel like I'm also almost 50, so maybe this is some coming of age equivalent of my convertible. But I'm finding that I'm not honoring my own needs, wants, or desires to love other people by being worried that I'm going to lose someone or that I'm going to disappoint someone that loves me. which I think both of those are the root of my commitment issues. And that's just a risk you have to take. Am I good at this? No. And I think, like, to be a good teacher, you have to be a good student. To be a good dom, you have to be a good sub. Like, in order to be a good loved person, you have to also be good at loving someone else.
Amen. Amen to that. So, my last question for this series: what is the meaning of life?
My snarfy answer is cheese. I think it goes back to my love of the ellipse. And I think the meaning of life is being able to hold the space between asking a question and getting an answer. And that kind of lingering looming is where your whole sense of self is dangling and possibly being witnessed or perceived by someone else or not. And that turning point, being able to hang in that turning point, is the meaning of life. And cheese.
Thank you. Well, Jess, thank you again for responding to these, again, some profound, some not intentionally profound, and others just kind of silly questions today on this episode of The Christian Bear. So happy to have you with us.
Oh, I am totally stoked to be here, and I will say yes to you anytime because it's nice to have a lovely conversation, even if this is more one-sided, but you come up with really thought-provoking questions. I do a lot of podcasts. I have not been asked many of those questions before, and you stumped me, which doesn't happen very often because I'm pretty good with quick words and stuff. Love it. Anytime.
Thank you again. This has been The Christian Bear with Dr. Ben Hillskamp.